Brivo Systems, Cloud Company, Security Company, Internet of Things Company. Our focus is physical security. Our passion is cloud. We are innovators. We are experts. We are technologists. We are Brivo Systems. Simply better security.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you a little bit about the journey that we've taken as a company over the past year. It's actually kind of interesting because actually Marco mentioned the fact that he is a company that's a hardware company in the software world, and we're the same thing. So the other part of it is that I mentioned the cloud here, and everybody in this room knows what it is, but that's a typical video that we choose to use in our industry that's a big differentiator for us. I start with the security industry being wrong because you don't have to sacrifice security for convenience. And what I mean by that is that in the security industry, anything that's considered convenient is considered insecure. And things like the cloud and technology like this is, stuff that's done in the movies, not actually, Minority Report type stuff. It's not actually real, but in our world it is, and we've been doing it since 1999. So I tell the story about when we're sitting with the Internet of Things. It's actually, being on the marketing side, kind of interesting for us because since 1999, what we were started on is we had this thing called the Smart Box. I had nothing to do with the marketing of it then, but that's the name they came up with the thing. It was actually a box, and they called it Smart. And what it did was when you bought something on the internet, it sent a 4-digit PIN to the shipper, and it was about this big. Maytag and IDEO were early investors, and you had this thing at your house, and when you bought something, they'd come to the house, they'd put it in this box, close it, and you would get a message on the BBM network back then. You're seeing companies now come out with this thing that's doing basically the same exact thing, but that's what they did back then. Then about 2001, when everything fell out, Maytag pulled out, but they had this technology that they knew that was built on the cloud, but they didn't call it that then. They just called it on servers. And then what they noticed is that they could take that technology and put it into big buildings. So instead of small boxes, put it into big boxes. And that's where we started from. So since then, if you fast forward up to about 2 years ago, we decided that these things that we used to call integrations are actually now APIs. And it's actually a business. We saw all these people actually start to make money off of these things that we more or less at some point were just giving away for these tech-friendly companies that were doing some stuff with our products that we weren't necessarily that interested in. But as things evolve, we become far greater and very much interested into it. But we believe the security industry is way back into their thinking as far as how they're addressing the physical security world, is addressing technology. And really what the people want is not necessarily what they're delivering to you. Because I don't know anybody that's like, what I really want is more cards and key fobs to carry around me to get into a building. And if you watch what goes on like at the TSA and other places, if you watch any building here in New York City, when you go into the lobby, the chaos that happens there, a lot of that is because of the security industry. It's a place where inconvenience is okay because who wants to be the one that sacrifices security for convenience? Well, you don't need to do that. I'll give you a case in point. Especially here in the city, if you go into a Starbucks or any other coffee shop that's around, you walk in, a lot of people are paying with their application, they're on the internet. Starbucks or any of the coffee shops, they know who you are. But if you want to use the bathroom, what do you have to do? You have to go get a key. That's creepy key, we call it. It's that thing, it's like a boat anchor with a key on the end. It's disgusting. I don't even want to know what's going on with that. But that's a great example of 99.9% of the people that are customers aren't those bad people that do bad things inside whatever bad people do inside bathrooms. But we inconvenience everybody for that one thing. Same thing as majority of the offices that you have here that you probably work for, where you have those cards and key fobs. If I invite you to my office, which a lot of people spend a lot of money to make this experience great, you come to my office and basically Angela's her name at our office, she accosts you or is not there, and the experience sort of breaks down from the point where you enter in. So we believe with things like presence and what's going on with Bluetooth Smart, Wi-Fi tracking, things like that, we can create a better experience without sacrificing security. So I talked about 2 years ago, we decided to get into this API business, and the thought was, with a 15-year-old company, we were going to create a new business that was going to open up our core technology to be exposed to the outside world to create applications on, which you could imagine created great angst with an enormous amount of security wonks inside of our office that worry about things that you would never worry about people worrying about when it comes to physical security. So what we decided to do was create a business unit called Brivo Labs. And that group was chartered to go out to take our core technology into contextual security spaces. And I use contextual because no one likes to hear less secure. But basically it's contextual. It's really, if you look at any place, there's different levels of security that is needed with, say, an office or a building or a stadium. You don't necessarily have to have the most extreme security like GSA buildings and the rest to get into the movie theater or to go see a ball game or to come to a conference like this. There's different levels of security, so we believe our core technology could express that. And people can then also take our technology, is a big differentiator from us than people that did client-server-based systems, to allow people that were very good at creating applications to use our hardware piece and give the features that we do, like opening a door, the ability to do so. And we showed that at some conferences recently where you can check into a hotel, book a hotel room, check in through the application. It expresses the keys and credentials to you. You can walk up to the door without taking the phone out, and the door will unlock if you have the proper credentials. Now, I just summarized that real quick. There's a whole lot of technical stuff that goes into doing that properly, but that's this idea of what our API can do. So part of what we did was we created this new thing called social access management. So instead of being access control, because most people don't like to be controlled, we call it social access management. And the idea behind it is we think of ourselves as the single sign-on for the physical world. So this idea that you could log in to a building and the building becomes social and can talk back to you. So it can know that you're there for a ball game and you've been there 10 times, and it can welcome you either through an application, a display, whatever it might be. The gate could open, and the experience could happen there where maybe they notify food and beverage. If I go up to the box seat that I have, the door can unlock instead of waiting for the concierge. It makes a better experience because the places can react to me. We see that happening already with online properties. If I go shop online, I sign in with my single sign-on. They know who I am, and they can curate that experience for me. We believe that same thing could happen within the physical brick and mortar world, and that's done, we believe, by technology and APIs and presence, and that's what our product is doing. So this is what the product looks like, the features, the foundations, and what's actually on site being the devices. There's a whole bunch of features within the features of what digital pass means. It's open. Developers can go on, pull it off. We use it internally as well to create the experiences that we have. And some things that people are doing with the API are things like anywhere anybody stands in line to get a service, creating that experience that could happen. Whether it's like I said, the coffee shop, it could be a restaurant, it could be the offices, which I'll talk to now. So we have this horizontal API that we have created, and then what we're doing is creating our own vertical applications where we know could be disruptive. So one of the first ones we did is a product called Rendezvous, which is a visitor experience system, so not a visitor management system that people know. But what we're looking to do is disrupt the paper and clipboard business that a lot of technology companies and other companies have. You go there, you sign on it, and most of them either do it because somebody told them they needed to, but no one really knows. You don't know what happens to the paper. There's no notifications that could happen after this, so it's a very analog, it's literally analog, experience that could happen. Well, what we've done is we've digitized that experience to where I can now walk in, and you'll see a video that shows how this works, but I can walk in and the space can know who I am, and the experience could be self-service or augmented to having somebody there. Another one that we're doing is the stadium. So this whole idea around the ticket typically being the centerpiece of the person. Well, the ticket doesn't mean anything. The ticket was just a way to express it to really somebody to allow you in. But what we believe now is the person could walk into the space, the ticket's part of it, And the experience, as I was saying before, could be everything from it knows that your son has a peanut allergy, so it tells you to go to the right instead of to the left, to having like I was saying, your favorite drink ready to be ordered, to the elevator, what they call destination dispatch, where it knows what floor to take you to, so you don't have to figure that out. And it's sort of just a curated experience for you. To movie theaters. Now, movie theaters do it up to a point, really. So I can buy online, I go to the movie theater, there's a kiosk, I print the ticket, but then there's still a person standing there that I have to give it to. Where with our system, what you could be to create is that whole thing could be, everything from it knows that every time I go there, I get popcorn and a Coke, to wayfinding if it's a large movie theater, to the gates being automatic, so when I walk up, they go. So it's almost like the TSA pre for the movie theaters. So you have these sort of express lanes, if you would, for people that have adopted and want the experience like that, but then you also have the ability to keep that experience. We're very, especially when it comes to stadiums and things like that, where people have a love affair with the places. And there's traditions. We're very cognizant of the traditions. So this isn't a case of clearing all that stuff out of the way and doing it digital. It's giving the opportunity for people to opt in if they would like to have this type of experience. And then we talk about the home. We personally focus on the enterprise side, but from the identity side of what we do, we believe your identity threaded throughout the day, if you look at all the different places that you go into, all of those things can be connected to where they can create this experience that you want. You're seeing a lot of this stuff happen with the thermostats and lighting controls and garage door openers and things like that. So it's this continuation of your identity throughout and the places being able to react and what we call social and creating the better experience. So to give you an idea of really what these things can do, what I wanted to do was to show you a video of 3 products that are actually in market today that can be utilized. So I'll go ahead and do that. So we see that as situational awareness that you saw, the device. It's showing known and unknown entities when they walk into a space, and they be able to identify them and then have the places react. So whether it's they have access to certain areas or they don't, whether they need to interact with, say, a display to present who they are and then have the ability to tie that to their identity so when they walk in. We're actually installing these into some medical facilities where they're utilizing it to track doctors when they're walking through. So when they maybe have an emergency or want to know where they're at, they can quickly identify them as well as the assets that are around. So sort of like an ERP type use case around that end. The difference on a lot of ours of, we hear, we purposely stay away from the advertising aspects of the presence capability that you do see within our API, because our belief is if it's based off of an event like I'm coming to this conference or I have a meeting at an office or a ball game, there's a reason that you're there and we're not just sending messages to you. You're going to engage because the value's there because the experience can be much better. So you do have the ability to opt out or just never opt in and still be able to get into the space. You just might have a different way of doing it. The other thing that you noticed on there was the utilization of wearables. So we see wearables where historically the security industry sees wearables as a very insecure thing. This whole bring your own devices to the space is still, if you pick up any security magazine, physical security magazine or read online, you'll notice that it's still a topic because they don't want to embrace it really because of all the implications that they believe could happen. Where our belief is it's going to happen. People want to do it. You can either decide to fight it and be left in the, as trying to respond to what other people are doing, or you can embrace it and figure out the ways to incorporate it into the different products that you have. So our belief is the wearables themselves can express what your identity is. You would have the ability then to have it react or use it as multi-factor authentication. So the ability to walk in and maybe it's 4 or 5 devices. I've logged in with my Facebook account, and then I did a biometric read at the door. All of those things together create this trust framework that we believe is needed when you come into a space, and then the place should have the policies in that in place to react. The trust networks that I talk about is the next area that we're really focused on. It's not just who you are, but then also the relationship that you have with spaces based off of who's within your social graph, and what does that mean? So if you come to our office and have met with our CEO before, it would be nice to know that, and then to be able to respond with a greeting or give our CEO a heads up that you're there. So whatever that might be, the experience could be curated based off of also your social graph that you have around that. So as far as we see the future within the security industry, companies are either have to change or they're going to die. The idea that they're going to be able to create these monolithic client-server-based systems and hide behind the veil of security is going to be challenged by everyone from Kickstarters to ourselves to people that aren't afraid. Like I've noticed, it was exciting to me to see the Plantronics presentation where they were even talking about access control, about how the earpiece could utilize the identity to then open up a door. I could tell you 5 years ago that conversation would never probably happen. So we're seeing pressures come from all different angles where people want to have those types of experience happen. So we're excited to be sitting at an area where really we can respond. And it's all done off of our APIs and not being afraid to expose that. We talked a little bit about how it's going. We're continuing to grow it. We're actually now taking from the core side of the business even more of the APIs and exposing them out. We have a developer outreach type program. And we see the future as being quite bright and exciting. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. It's actually great to see this conversation. It's very timely. So in the last survey I did, 77% of the companies that we interviewed said security was a top concern. And the challenge with that is it paralyzes all of your efforts in an organization, everywhere from how you do BYOD, how do you mobile enable apps, how do you connect with partners. So I definitely think this is a critical challenge that people are addressing. And you mentioned sort of this social access and this concept of context, right? So when you think about that in terms of APIs, does this just translate into more API calls, or is there something different that we need to think about when we're thinking about context and APIs?
I do believe it'll be more API calls, especially as you're working with the hardware aspect of how to make things actually do what you want them to do. So not just the information share, but then physically having it hit a door and unlock to, or incorporating the door to the camera. So, because we do hosted video as well, and there's a correlation between the door opening and surveillance video. So we believe it's a lot that it's going to actually do from the API side. So the numbers that they showed earlier about the increase of API calls and what's happening there, we've seen just an increase in our own business because it's starting to be used in areas that we never thought about either of how people want to do it. So it's exciting on that end, but it also makes our operations guys they had to get educated on it as well and not be so nervous. But yeah.
Yeah, so I guess then we can translate the move to context equals a move to the need for a scalable architecture because you're probably going to experience a wide range and volume of calls. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I wanted to ask you though is, did I hear you right when you said you just did your APIs 2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay, so earlier on we heard from John about the whole concept of how we've evolved in APIs. What was the thing that kind of kicked you over into saying, okay, now is the time for APIs as a 15-year-old company?
That's a good question. I would say our CEO and myself were sitting down and we were looking at our business. And in the security industry, there's typically all the businesses get to a certain size and you either get bought or you stay there. So we saw this sort of next opportunity, which is the contextual side, and because the marketplace in high security is only so big, whereas the contextual security aspects of identity and entering into spaces is much broader. And the idea of being able to use social identities and it being brought into the world from the people that are using it, not by the security people down in the basement that are giving you cards and key fobs. So we saw this sort of super highway of opportunity more from a technology scale side than we did just in the security industry.
Yeah,
and
so broader base of target audience that you could go after.
Yeah, much broader.
Yeah.
Things like,
Okay.
I mean, just to give you a point, we were at South by Southwest. That's not typically a security show for a physical security company, so
Thank
the fact
goodness.
that we were there, that opened up a whole new market, and we're actually having conversations now with the marketing departments of places, not just operations and security, but we're now in marketing and finance. I mean, so we're able to, actually we see a lot of companies have customer experience people that are interacting with ours now, which never before would they even, because before we were restricting the experience. Now we're seen as enhancing the experience because they can curate it.
Convenient.
Yeah, we believe so.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Appreciate it.